This is Nursing Unveiled, where we also uncover all the tips and tricks to nursing success. All right, let's begin. So if your school uses the Kaplan Predictor for your exiting exam, stick to Kaplan in the very beginning and don't focus on anything else besides that. And this is the reason, because there are some discrepancies between information. So for example, when it comes to pediatric ages and what they tend to do, there are a little bit of different depending on whether you're using Uworld or you're using Kaplan. So I really do not recommend using both platforms at the same time if your school do use Kaplan Predictor for your exiting exam, because it can really screw you over when it comes to certain information. I really suggest is that if your school does Kaplan Predictor Exam, is that you save all your Kaplan and Kaplan notes. That way, when you are gearing up for the NCLEX exam, is that you actually look back on those notes, and this will help you save a lot of time in your Uworld studying. Because what tends to happen is that people tend to really just gear for Q-bank questions, and this is great practice. However, if you already know that you've been studying for your Kaplan Predictor, which is also NCLEX material, and some of it, of course, there's gonna be a cross between the Kaplan and the Uworld product. So if you could use that to your advantage, then you will save yourself a lot of time when you're studying within Uworld. The reason I say that you will save yourself a lot of time is because you don't have to waste time on trying to digest the content and understand what you're looking at. Instead, you could really just focusing on how the testing style questions are like. And that way you could just drill through even more questions. Now, the biggest benefit I had with Kaplan is that they have some really great charts that help you think in the mindset of NCLEX for critical thinking. For example, they have a chart for a decision tree where it helps you kind of decide how you should narrow down a question when you have a question that is really tough and you're just having those two answers that you're just really stuck on. And so the Kaplan decision tree really helps break it down step by step as to how you should kind of follow a guide to help you think through a question. Another chart that I really love was the unstable versus stable. And this really helped me decide whether, say, if I have 4 answer choices and it lists the different type of patient and conditions that they have, which one should I decide on choosing as your most unstable patient and who you should go to first. And with that said, due to the nature of Kaplan, it is really focusing on critical thinking. So you're going to get some of the most challenging questions you could possibly face. But on the other hand, it may be a little bit different from how your NCLEX style questions may be. So with that said, you would want to think about if you want to actually stick with Kaplan towards the end when you are really prepping for NCLEX. One of the unique features of Kaplan is that they have what it is called a question trainer, and they have question trainer from 1 to 10. So what it is that there are 10 tests and each one progresses in level of difficulty. So by the time you really reach your 10th one, I can probably guarantee you your rate of passing that NCLEX, it's almost like a 95%. There's almost like no fail because of how much information they throw at you. And some of the information that's on there, you probably never even pay attention to studying. So with the Kaplan question trainer, you are really prepped for NCLEX for sure. And it's almost a guaranteed pass in that sense. Now, personally, I did not use this feature myself, but for some people, it really helped them. And for those who actually started out with Kaplan Predictor and had the Kaplan product and do not want to do another investment in Uworld just because Uworld is also pretty pricey, some people just still pass with that. Now, one of the biggest issue I had with Kaplan is that sometimes, not all the time, but just sometimes their wording, it's a little bit off from how I would have actually phrased that question. Because of how it's phrased, it mislead me down the wrong path as to what they were really trying to ask. And however, with that said, when I did my NCLEX, when I did my Uworld, I didn't have that much of an issue with that problem. So going on, if your school does not do Kaplan Predictor and you really want to decide which one to really use, my recommendation is Uworld. Now, don't turn off just because I said that just now. There are some really important things that I want you to know while using this feature. I actually have nursing students and also colleagues who came back to me saying they regret not buying certain option or doing certain things on their platform. So I want to make sure that those mistakes does not occur to you as well. On Uworld, there are several options you can purchase from. Now, the ones that I really recommend are the ones that offer 2 self-assessment options. And the reason for it is because the self-assessments are the most beneficial and most accurate to how the NCLEX is when it comes to testing. Personally, I bought the non-renewable 2 self-assessment option, and the reason for it is because I spent so much money and I was really set on passing on my first try. Now, for some of us, that may be a little bit hard to judge because of how NCLEX is, and especially nowadays due to the pandemic, there have been a lot of changes. So for some of you guys, you may want to invest in the renewable options as well. But as long as you have the 2 self-assessment options, those are your best bet on really trying to pass your NCLEX. And to go even further, it was so similar that there were actually certain content from those self-assessment that I saw within my NCLEX exam. Now, the reason why I suggested you having 2 self-assessment is because I felt like the second one had content that were even more in similarities to my exam. So that is the reason why I really suggest having that second self-assessment test. Overall, I felt the Uworld platform actually has a lot more status, which is select all that apply. And this is really helpful because the NCLEX have a lot of select all apply questions. So it was really beneficial in that sense as well. Now, this does not mean that Kaplan does not have select all apply. It's just that the select all apply that they do have is not so similar to how it would be on the NCLEX. And also the level of difficulty with their status especially is on the harder side versus on Uworld there was a level of progression of status. So there were more easier ones than some, and this really gave a wide range of variety of similarities. The first thing that really jumped at me with Uworld in comparison to Kaplan is how convenient their features are. This first feature is the feature I use the most within Uworld, and that is the Note tab. In the Note tab, what you could do is that once you reach that question and you're doing your remediation, you could take notes when you click on that tab, and you could save your notes, and what it does is that it compiles it for you, all the notes that you've been doing, into a PDF format if you want to print that out. Not only that, but also what it has is that when you go back to your notes, it has the question ID where you could search in their search box and you could look at which question that you were having trouble on and trying remediating. And this way you don't have to spend your time actually typing out the question within your notes, unlike Kaplan, which doesn't have this feature. And you may be spending more time with typing out questions or just copy and pasting questions. Now, a downside to the Note tab feature is that it does have a word limit as to how much you can type. So with that said, you want to really streamline as to how much you want to type on there. And that way, it may prevent you from trying to really list certain things out. The second difference that I noticed within Uworld are how much visuals and charts they do have. So for example, they would have pictures of, say, serotonin syndrome, and you don't know what that is. And what tends to happen is that a lot of platforms just list what those manifestations are. But with Uworld, what I noticed is that they do have a picture of a person manifesting those certain features, and it will pinpoint to you what they're manifesting exactly. So you could actually save those types of pictures into your flashcards, and afterwards you could go back to all your flashcards and look over all these visuals and charts that you did save up and actually study through those chartings. So you don't have to try to copy and paste something, which they do not let you in these visuals. So it helps that they have the flashcard features. So that leads me right into my third point, is that they do have flashcard feature in which you could create your own flashcards, or you could simply just save information, say even a chunk of information, into a flashcard, and that way you could have that as your flashcard feature. So you don't have to create everything manually by typing everything out. Last feature that makes Uworld so convenient is their app feature, and this helps people to study on the go. And for me personally, I use this a lot as well when I was going on vacation prior to NCLEX, which is not the smartest idea, but I did it and passed NCLEX, and it was really a testimonial as to how helpful this feature really is for those of you who really need to be on the go and you don't really have time to fully sit down and study all the time. Also, you guys want to know how I managed to pass my NCLEX while having not just one vacation, but 2 vacation. I could also do a video for that in the future. So if you want that, please leave a comment down below so that way I make sure to know that in my next video. Although there are a lot of great features within Uworld, the one component that I would really watch out for within Uworld is actually the self-assessment portion. Now for this one, after you start the test, I think they give you about a week or so a very short time frame in which you could actually complete your remediation, or if you want to study, that is, then you could look that over. But it's a very short time, and you have to make sure that you have enough time dedicated to remediating those questions after you finish your test. Otherwise, your membership for those self-assessment will be expired and you can no longer have access to it. Ultimately, it really comes down to how confident you feel in your knowledge of NCLEX. Like I said in the beginning, some of my peers did not even use Uworld, and they still managed to pass NCLEX with flying colors just like everybody else. Now, if you're like me and you don't feel as confident, or you're the type that is on the go a lot, or you work a lot, and you may have some downtime here and there at work, perhaps, then Uworld is definitely a good investment because you can really utilize it to its fullest advantage with how convenient they are. All right, that's it for today. Let me know what your thoughts on these two platforms, or if you have experiences using them. Also, if you have any more questions, concerns, not only can you leave a comment down below, you could also reach me on Instagram and on my email. For my Instagram, it is nursing_unveiled. And I'll have all that in the description box down below. And as always, if you like this videos, please give it a thumbs up, like, comment, and subscribe. And please check out my other videos. I'll be coming out with videos every Monday, so stick around, and I'll see you next time. Bye.